The climate has already warmed at least 1 degree over 100 years. And you know, people, I think, don't really understand. They think the Earth is immutable. They think we can't destroy it, that it's here to stay, and it's always been this way. It's not so. You know, some 200 plus million years ago, there's geologic evidence to say that maybe there was only one landmass on Earth, and it all split apart. I don't know whether that's true or false. I've read a lot of science on that subject. But ever since the Industrial Revolution, when we began to pump carbon dioxide through fuel into the atmosphere is very limited. It's maybe 7 miles up, and that's it. And it's like a shell. And so every bit of this that's pumped into the atmosphere stays. It doesn't dissipate. So as we fill the atmosphere with pollutants, methane, carbon dioxide, other things, what happens is it warms the Earth. And it begins with animal habitat disappears. It begins with the ocean beginning to rise. It begins with more violent hurricanes, tornadoes, funnel clouds in the Pacific, where in my youth, they never used to be. They are now on occasion. And lightning strikes. I remember one June where there were 1,000 lightning strikes that started hundreds of small fires in California. When it rains, the drops are bigger. The rain's more violent. Drought is more prevalent. So I think, actually, what's going to be the ultimate changer is weather. People see weather. They see hurricanes. They see the devastation. And so I think eventually people are going to come around to support restrictions on carbon dioxide. Maybe a fee on the use of carbon that goes in to replace our deficit, our debt. A $20 fee, I think, is like 1.2 trillion in revenue over 10 years. If you just take half that, it's 600 billion. So,
is there much support for that in the Senate?
Something. I wouldn't say there's much. I would say this: people are coming to realize now, and we have a little caucus that meets and discusses. We've had, I think, 3 global warming bills up. They didn't get, I think they got 36 or so votes, but everything's getting worse. The weather is getting worse, and the climate change is getting worse. And actually, since 2008, good energy has doubled. That's the good thing. That, you know, electric cars are being more prevalent. Hybrids are being more prevalent. People are saving money. So good things are happening. The question is, can we really bite the bullet and make the decision that we're going to save the planet? Because if it warms, and I heard your opening spot, 4 to 7 degrees, it's too late. If we can confine this warming to 1 to 2 degrees, then there's big change, but it's handleable. And that's where we should strive to go. China in particular has a terrible, terrible problem. Deaths are now up from pollution. People are wearing masks virtually all winter long in Shanghai, in Beijing.
And there have been some recent reports putting price tags on all of that. The price of the health, loss of life, etc. President Obama, in his inaugural address and in his State of the Union, pledged stronger action on climate. Do you think he's doing enough? Specifically, what should he do?
Well, you know, here's the president has so many things, and everybody says, do you think he's doing enough on this or that or the other thing? And he's going to appoint a new EPA director. The EPA now has the ability to move ahead. So it's very important that the EPA director be strong and be willing to take the action that's necessary to help us all save this planet.
And you think Gina McCarthy will get confirmed?
It's a good question. Everything is questioned these days. I mean, it's the first time I have ever seen a president go through years of his presidency without being able to confirm members of his own cabinet.
And the judiciary.
And the judiciary. Well, the judiciary is a sort of place apart, but for the executive branch to work, having your cabinet in place, I mean, is a no-brainer. And, you know, everybody says, well, elections matter. Yes, they matter. Whoever's president has to be able to govern, and the way you govern is through your executives, which are your cabinet secretaries.
Do you think that the U.S. should approve the Keystone Pipeline?
I have just been reading a National Geographic article on tar sands. And everything that I saw from that article is bad. Now, this tar sand project is up in Alberta. I'm told that the area is bigger than the state of Florida. I'm told that it's a forested area which they mow down and then began to dig these huge, giant lakes that they pour chemicals in to produce this form of tar sands oil. The earth is defaced forever. Now we have to make up our mind, do we want to deface large portions of our earth forever? I don't think so, because we're making progress on clean energy, and that ought to be where we go. Some people say, well, you know, if the pipeline isn't built north to south through the center of our country, they're only going to do it east to west and send it to China. I think that is really not a very good argument, because I think we really have to look at tar sands.
So another area of potential large oil development is here in California. The Monterey Shale, new fracking technologies making accessible about 15 billion barrels of oil, which is equal to half the amount originally in the North Slope of Alaska. Should that be developed, and should California tax that? California is the only state that doesn't tax oil extraction.
Well, I sure think we ought to tax it, because I don't think, candidly, that it's all that necessary. There will be no oil drilling off the coast of California if Senator Boxer and I prevail, and we have so far. And the House delegation, and the House delegation as well. The people of our state voted, and we voted against offshore oil drilling, and I believe we ought to keep that vote. But my emphasis would be on clean energy. I would, you know, the wind farms, the solar facilities, and there's so much research going on different forms of fuel. I mean, I'm amazed at what they think they can make fuel out of these days. So, you know, I say, that's just great, let's do it. And leave these fossil fuels alone, because they pollute the atmosphere. I spend a lot of my time on water in California. There is no question, in my view, that we are on our way to a much drier climate. We are on because of global warming. We are on our way to the major source of water, which is the Sierra Nevada snowpack drying up. And it's very serious. And so there are big water fights. Right now, the water allocation for south of Delta farmers, I believe, is 20% of their contract amount. That is way too little. A farmer can't plant, irrigate, and harvest with 20% of his contract amount. He probably can't go to the bank and get the loans that he might need with 20% of his contract. If you have low-lying areas, let's take Bangladesh, let's take some of the bigger islands, and they are flooded, where do people go? And what's the result of that movement of people in low-lying areas all over the world? What's the result in oceans warming so that fishing stocks are killed or no longer as prevalent? So these are the kinds of national security concerns, I think, that emanate from that. And what was being done is having our satellites track various areas so that we could note changes over years. The melting Arctic, the melting Antarctic, Greenland, which is substantial melting. And from that, you see the movement of people that's going to have to take place, and then what happens with that.
And some people are very concerned about Indonesia, largest Muslim country, heavily dependent on fishing. If fishing starts to go down
That's exactly right.
in Indonesia, what does that mean for stability and
that's
things like
that's what I tried to say. I wasn't as eloquent as you were.
No, sorry. Last question is, how do you think climate change will affect you and your family in the years ahead?
Well, I have 7 grandchildren, and I really believe it will affect them. And I really hate to say this, but I spent 40 years in this life and in government. To end it and not have secured a world that's capable of sustenance and beauty and wonder for my grandchildren is just a crushing blow. So I hope that within the next 6 years you're going to see a climate change bill pass the Senate, the House, and be signed by this president.
We have to end it there.
I think that's hard to predict right now. I think it's not on the high priority list. I think that a carbon fee is growing in popularity, and it's my intention to, I know there's been a bill introduced at $20 a ton, and it's my intention to introduce one at $10 a ton, and we'll see what happens to it.